Hello bitches and bisexuals, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my July wrap-up. So I read 10 books this month. It wasn't necessarily my best reading month, primarily because I was reading a lot of stuff that I didn't like, and I'm really realizing that whenever I take on these challenges where I read books that are not necessarily great, that I end up reading less as a result, which kind of makes sense. All of that being said, I think 10 books is pretty solid. It's like not my best reading month ever, but I have a feeling in my gut, in my soul, that August is going to be a better reading month. Without further ado, let's get into what I read this month. So the first book that I read was The Wives by Taryn Fisher, and I give this book 4 stars. This is an arc that I got at BEA, and it doesn't come out until December, but I was just in the mood for a psychological/domestic thriller, which I really never am in the mood for. Like, I don't read those hardly ever, but I picked this up and I was not disappointed. Now, that being said, since I don't read a lot of these books, I'm not sure that I'm the best judge of whether this book was good or not. I would love for someone to pick this up and tell me whether it was good, because I just don't know. I enjoyed it, but was it good? Objectively, who knows? I will say that this book was batshit insane, though. It's about a girl named Thursday whose husband is married to 2 other women. So he goes to his wives' different houses on different days of the week, and unlike a typical polygamous situation, the wives are not aware of each other. I mean, they know that the other people exist, but they don't know each other. There is no sister-wife situation going on. She knows that she only has a couple of days of the week, but she doesn't know who these other women are. That's kind of part of the arrangement. The situation kind of changes when Thursday discovers a note in her husband's pocket when he comes to visit her that is a doctor's appointment for another woman, and she assumes rightly that this person is one of his other wives, and it sends Thursday down onto this path of figuring out who the other wives are, what secrets her husband might be hiding. I thought this was so clever and interesting. I'm always really into kind of polyamory, polygamy, etc. It's fascinating to me. I watched Sister Wives back in the day, but this was so different than that and so satisfying. I think for me, I'm hesitant to pick up psychological thrillers a lot of the time because I'm scared that they're going to do the mental health representation incorrectly, which I think is a pretty fair complaint. I think a lot of the time schizophrenia and bipolar are used as plot twists, and I really despise that, so that was not the case here. And I adored how the ending was open to interpretation. I mean, I will say it was a very conclusive ending. You definitely know what happens and what has occurred, but figuring out whose side you're on, do you agree with the person who has been done wrong? Do you agree with the person that did wrong? You know, I liked that. I liked that I could interpret it, and I think it kind of speaks to the culture of misogyny, and I don't know. It's a good book, and I would recommend it. Like I said, I'm not sure that I am the best judge of a psychological thriller, since I am not a typical reader of this genre. I would love Lala to read this. I know she just got an arc of it, and let me know. Enjoyed this a ton. This was a great way to start my month. The next 2 books that I read were sort of middle of the road for me. They were Archangels Consort and Archangel's Blade by Nalini Singh. This is part of the Guild Hunters series, which is about archangels who turn people into vampires if they request to be vampires, and you know, it's a whole expansive paranormal romance situation. So if I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't remember very much about either of these books, which I think speaks a lot to this 3-star rating. It's the book wasn't objectively bad or anything, but it's nothing to write home about. I think the main 2 issues that I have with most of her books is that the sex to me isn't that bomb, and then the endings are really lackluster, and I think I was willing to excuse that for the first 3 books in the series because the first 3 books follow the same main couple throughout, you know? And I was like, okay, well, if there's gonna be a cliffhanger or an kind of inconclusive ending about the state of the relationship in the first book, that's fine because we're going to get more page time of these characters later on. However, in the 4th book of the series, it follows a new couple. So we see them, you know, kind of fall in love or whatever, or have sex at the very least. But at the end, there's no real conclusive ending. It doesn't feel like a true romance in my opinion, because romance is very much, we love each other, we're gonna be together forever, let's get married, let's have babies, etc. I mean, it doesn't have to have all of those neat little bows, but I expect some sort of good ending if there's only going to be 1 book about the characters' relationship. You know, I wanted big, I wanted bold, especially when this book is about a centuries-old Russian vampire pining for his dead wife. I want his relationship with this new woman to come close to that relationship that he has been pining for centuries, you know? And it just wasn't. It didn't satisfy me. You know, it's sad too because I genuinely really enjoy listening to audiobooks of these. To me, they're very easy listening, and they take me back to a simpler time. Paranormal romance has always been kind of a staple in my life, especially through high school, middle school. They're easy to digest, and after that ending of the 4th book, I was just so unsatisfied in noticing these patterns that I'm unsure when and if I'm even going to pick up more in this series, which is pretty sad. But give them 3 stars. I wouldn't not recommend this series, but I'm not overwhelmingly in love with any of these books. Now on to the 3 books that I finished for my I Read 5 new adult romances. The first book that I finished was The Friendzone by Soraya Wilson. I give this book 4 stars. This was a clean romance. The title of this book I feel is a little bit of a misnomer because it's not about a fedora tipping neckbeard who believes women solely exist for his sexual desires. It's about a girl who is the daughter of a football coach, and this guy transfers to this university. He, I guess, got in a fight at his old school. He's transferred because he deserves a second chance and he wants to get his act together, essentially. He's a really good guy. I think him getting in a fight was probably just like a one-off situation. But anyway, the daughter of the football coach ends up tutoring the quarterback, and it's kind of about the relationship from there. There's sort of a forbidden element because the coach has forbidden anyone on the team to date, and especially not date his daughter. And there's also this sort of fake dating element because the quarterback fake dates the tutor because the tutor is pining for this kind of, you know, art cinema fucking pretentious ass dude. But eventually, obviously, the quarterback and the tutor fall for each other. So it's got that kind of naive, nerdy, virginal main character with the kind of like alpha bad boy football player situation, but both of the characters are well developed and nice enough. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like anyone was getting taken advantage of here. I will say the plot was in no way remarkable and the writing wasn't like spectacular either, but the amount of slice of life moments and the way that the author was able to develop the relationship was very impressive to me. I understood how these two characters complemented each other. Interesting to look at that in comparison to a lot of other romances that we know and love. It was good and it was cute, and while there was no sex, I like wasn't disappointed. It was a good book. I gave this one 4 stars. The next book that I read this month was The Locker Room by Megan Quinn, and I give this book 3 stars. From a technical standpoint, this book gets less stars than The Friendzone, but from a pure enjoyment standpoint, this one I think was much more my speed. It's about a girl who transfers to this like big baseball college after a breakup, a really tough breakup with kind of an abusive dick for a boyfriend. So basically she has a random drunk encounter with this star baseball player. I will say it's a fully consensual and barely sexual encounter, and then they meet again in a sober setting, and the baseball player ends up falling really, really hard for our main character, Emery. His name is Knox, her name is Emery. I think what really did it for me in this romance is how Knox pursued Emery. It was a very respectful pursuit. Emery was really on board with it, and he definitely tried to prove why not all men are trash, and I really liked that. I respected that. It was a 10 out of 10 for me. I also adored the banter. I talked about it more in my other video, but you know, the writing I think really entices me and is something that makes me want to read more of Megan Quinn's books, even if this one wasn't the perfect one for me. And now we can move on to why this book was not the perfect one for me. At the 80% mark, there is a marked time jump. It's about an 8-year time jump. To me, that doesn't really work very well in books when it comes to the believability of a relationship. There's going to be that big of a time gap. The characters need to be together those whole 8 years. If you break up for 8 years, you're not going to be the same people, and it's just not going to work as well. So to me, that kind of hindered my enjoyment of the book a whole lot. It just didn't feel like the appropriate avenue for this particular book to take either. That being said, I doubt the author takes this approach to all of the endings of her books, so I definitely want to check out her backlist. And also, when I was doing some research on Megan Quinn, I found her Instagram and I found that she's actually married to a woman and has 2 adorable children. We just like stan queer authors, so I would recommend Megan Quinn, maybe just not this book. And then the last book that I finished for my I Read 5 was The Secret Girl, a reverse harem bully romance by C.M. Stunick, I think is her name. This was a hot mess, which was probably unintentionally transphobic, but it was definitely transphobic in my opinion. Quick summary: girl's dad is dean of an all-boys school. Girl decides to dress up as a guy so she doesn't get bullied. There's some nonsense at play. I think the real issue comes into the tricking element of the story. One of the male love interests falls for a girl in disguise, and he believes that he's gay. He's conflicted about his sexuality as a result of being attracted to this girl that he thinks is a guy, and I think it kind of plays into that unfair stereotype that trans, especially male to female trans people, are trying to trick cis people, and I think that's just patently untrue, obviously, and I think it kind of played into that stereotype in a way that I wasn't comfortable with reading. Also, some of the language surrounding the questioning characters' sexuality was disheartening to me. All of the guys in the reverse harem are friends. The one guy who is questioning his sexuality, all of his friends are like, "You're not gay. There's no way you're gay. You couldn't possibly be gay. You've never liked a guy before." And that did not sit well with me, and that's not how you handle your friends when someone comes to you and tells you, "Hey, I might be gay." So I really did not like that. That wasn't cool with me. This gets, you know, 1 train wreck star. The next book that I read this month is one that I thoroughly enjoyed, and it was Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. I did not read this as a part of the Dragon's Tea book club that is put on by Melanie from L to the Any and Amy from Crowns and Quills. However, the book did get put on my radar by them. I'm gonna leave their information down in my description box. I love their book club. It's all about reading diverse fiction. If you guys want to give it a go, definitely go and check them out. This book is about Zainab, who is a Muslim hijabi who gets suspended from school because she's fighting against her racist and just xenophobic teacher, obviously wrongly suspended, and she ends up going to visit her aunt as a result. So she was gonna go see her aunt for spring break anyway. She gets suspended right before spring break, so she's like, I'll just take an extended little break, go see my aunt in Qatar. And on her flight over, she ends up meeting Adam, who is also Muslim. It's sort of a chance encounter, sort of a kismet situation, but once they actually get to Qatar, they find out that their families know each other, they become friends, they develop a romantic relationship, etc. The core of this story, I think, is very twofold. You've got a really strong thread of what it means to be Muslim and what it means to fight against oppression. I like that both Adam and Zainab have very different ideas on what is the right way to do things, and they have these conversations in a very elegant and respectful way, and it definitely got me to think about things that I have never thought about before. And then you also have the idea of loss and family obligation and what it means to have a kind of hereditary illness that someone in your family has died from. It's very, very well done. And then also, I actually kind of lied, there's a third core to the story, and that's love. So the more I think about this book, the more I realize how unique it is among the YA contemporaries that I have read this year. It deals with heavy topics, but it was not a chore to get through in any way. It brought issues to my attention that I had never previously thought about, especially around hereditary illness and obligation. And then the relationship and the respect at the center of this relationship, especially as it pertains to religion, was so fascinating to me. I loved how these characters came together because they do have the same religion, and there were, like I said, hard topics, but it was done in a way that wasn't dark. I highly, highly recommend this book. This is definitely one of my favorite contemporaries of the year. The next book that I read this month was one that I had been putting off for so long, and I kind of regret putting it off because it's actually really, really good. It's Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha and Young. I give this book 4 stars. I think everyone knows about this furry book. In this world, furries are good, half furries are okay, and then humans are garbage. The basic premise of the book is that the furry king says that as a favor to the humans that are garbage, he is going to take 8 of their young women and have them as concubines. Our main protagonist in the story, her name is Lei, and she is not trained to be one of these 8 girls. Most of the 8 girls are brought up from birth and know that this is going to be their place, or they hope to be selected, so they've been trained to be selected. Lei never wanted to do this, and so it's about her struggling to come to terms with her situation and to fight against this oppression. Obviously, no one wants to be a concubine. No one wants to be kept against their will. It's also about Lei kind of falling in love for the first time, and about how the person that she falls in love with also fights in a very different way, in a more external way against this oppression. So I was hesitant to pick this one up because I'd heard such mixed things, and I typically don't like to read books about sexual assault, mostly because I like literature as a form of escapism. But this one was so well done, and I didn't feel like the assault was done gratuitously or for shock value. I think the one scene that is anyway explicit is more about the emotion behind the encounter and less about the physicality, so I really appreciated that, and it definitely made me sympathetic without feeling trampled on, if that makes sense, emotionally. So I really liked the way that that was done. I think it's a really important book, and I think a lot of people will take a lot from this story. It's definitely very empowering. I liked the Own Voices Asian rap. The only reason that I give this book 4 stars, though, was because this is not a series that I'm going to continue on with. As much as I liked reading this book, I felt like the ending, to be honest, could have stood alone. I'm sure that the story carries on in a really fun and exciting way, but there's just not very many fantasy series that I want to continue on with. The next book I read was a adult motorcycle romance, and it is Welcome to the Dark Side by Gianna Darling. I gave this book 4 stars. This was recommended by my dear friend Jess from PeaceLoveBooksxo. If you don't follow her channel already and you want romance recs, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. I'm gonna put, again, a link to her channel in the description down below because I think she gives fabulous recommendations at a much higher volume than I do, so you definitely want to check her out. Alright, so I'll just start by saying that I didn't realize this was going to be such a polarizing choice, but there was a lot of controversy on my Goodreads once I read and rated this book. 2 people were very vocal in the comments on my review, saying either I had lost my sanity or they really appreciated the fact that I read trash books and was able to, like, suspend my disbelief for this one. Okay, so this book is basically about a girl who gets shot in front of her parents' church at the age of 7 and is saved by the head of this motorcycle club. The whole shooting happens in the first place because there's 2, like, rival biker gangs, and shit goes down in front of the church. Anyway, she gets saved by this dude. He goes to prison for his gang-related activity. While he is in prison, the 7-year-old girl starts writing to him, and the first good chunk of the story is these 2 writing letters to each other back and forth while he is in prison. You know, the story kind of goes from there. As Louise, the girl, is growing up, we get more insight into her shitty home life and her shitty family situation. She's suffered from cancer as well, and seeing how her parents react and treat her as a result of her cancer is pretty fucked up. And obviously she ends up falling for this biker dude because she wants to be a bad girl, she wants to be free-spirited, etc. I can understand why people would not like this book for a few different reasons. I know a lot of people don't like motorcycle clubs because of kind of like misogynistic culture of them, and then, you know, the age gap could be problematic. I will say, with any book, you kind of have to decide what it is you're okay with. Since I think romance reading is more of an emotional pursuit than an intellectual pursuit, I don't think you have to think so much about the reality of the situation. Usually you think more about how it makes you feel. So for me, in this case, I didn't actually find that there was a grooming element to it, so this story didn't bother me. Although, for some people, you might be more or less okay with this book, and that's okay. You know, the writing was a little bit cheesy at times, but it was definitely a classic MC romance. Lots of drama, lots of intrigue, lots of respectful alphaness, and it was one of the only books this month that I didn't want to put down, which to me, that's at the end of the day what I want. I like it, I don't have to defend it, you don't have to read about it at the end. The last book that I read this month was Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. minutes in, I gave this book 4 stars. It's a story basically about a supervillain who gets saddled with this sidekick who is a shapeshifter, and it is about the supervillain kind of reconciling with his enemy who they've known for a long time. They end up falling in love, kind of. There's a lot to it. I'm not going to get too much into the plot. My only complaint really for this book, why I didn't give it 5 stars, was that it was gay, but it could have been gayer. I think there was a lot of implied gayness, and it didn't feel queer-baity, obviously, because I think Noelle Stevenson, I don't want to make assumptions, I think Noelle Stevenson's queer, or at least she writes a lot of queer stories. I kind of wanted it to be, not performative, I wanted there to be at least a fucking kiss. That's all I'm gonna say. So, it was good, and I just overall, I guess I can't be mad at it. So that's it. Those are the 10 books that I read this month. Before I go, I thought I'd talk to you guys a little bit about my reading plans in August, mostly because I don't do TBRs, but I actually do have a TBR this month, some of which is secret, so I didn't want to make like a whole separate video. But I wanted to talk about the 3 books that I'm reading as a part of book clubs I'm a part of, so that way if you guys want to read and participate, you can. So the first book that I'm reading this month is one that is for my own personal book club that I have not talked about yet here, but I have talked about it a lot on Twitter. It's the Smonthly book club, which basically is smut and monthly. Put together, you get Smonthly. I'm going to be reading one smutty book every month. You guys can read it with me. We can talk about it. We can discuss. I think it's very on brand for me. Like if I were to have just one book club, then it would be about smut because I love it. It's just me. And my first pick for this month is Lesson in Thorns by Sierra Simone. A lot of you guys helped me pick this book. I'm very excited about it. Also kind of scared because I heard the sequel's not as great. This is sort of like a bisexual, poly-erotic, gothic tale. Very excited to read that. Give that a go. I'm going to be doing a live show for this book on my channel Monday, the 19th of August at 10/9 Central. If you guys want to come and listen to me discuss it with my lovely guest co-host Garen from Goblet of Fiction, who is just so fucking hysterical, it's gonna be a good time. I'm really excited for it. The next book that I'm reading this month as a part of the New Release Book Club, which is hosted by Brody from the channel @2Brody, is going to be House of Salt and Sorrow by Aaron A. Craig. Very excited to read this one. I got this as a part of Book of the Month YA. I'm not going to do an annoying plug for this, but if you do want a Book of the Month YA book for $5, I've got a link down in my description. But we're going to be reading this book. I'm really excited about it. Heather from Aphrodite Reads is also going to be in the live show along with some other lovely people. This book's basically like Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses, but spooky. So I'm really excited to give that one a go. And then lastly, I'm going to be reading Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater for the Trashback book club that I do with Heather from Aphrodite Reads and Carrie from Carrie the Book Belt. I love this book club. I don't think a lot of you guys know about it, but it is essentially where we read like throwback 2000s paranormal books, talk about how they're either really good or really don't stand the test of time. I'm really excited to try this one. I feel like everybody's really excited for Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. This is one of her older books. It's about werewolves, which like hell yeah. So I'm just excited to reread this and revisit it. So that live show is going to be happening on my channel Monday the 26th of August, 9/8 Central. It's gonna be a really good time. Come talk to us about werewolves and spooky stuff. So those are the 3 like books that I'm for sure reading this month. I have some other plans, some exciting like I Read 5 videos planned perhaps, some like smutty book recommendations planned perhaps. It's gonna be a good month. I'm really excited for August. I hope you guys are too. I would love to know down in the comments below what your favorite read was this month. I think that's it. I love you guys so much, and until next time.